regards to Ria, Kalpana, Larsana. Thank you so much for putting this together. I really appreciate for kind of following up and putting this. Ria, especially seeing her in her protests here in Cambridge area, is very sobering. She's feisty, and she speaks her heart, and then she can also raise slogans. So I think we need that kind of culmination. Also, we would like to send our well wishes to Sugata, who couldn't be with us due to some family emergency. And just before I begin, I just want to say Jai Sri Ram. And I think there are no buyers here. At least that's right. Bharatha ki Jai. I'm just checking the boxes because I have to know. I did my job. Now the few points of this conversation. When it was raised, the future of India, one of my friend Manush sent me. He replied to me. He said the future should be in quotation mark. If at all there is going to be a future, that needs to be envisioned. And I think based on that, there are a few vocabularies that are at the moment that need to be explored further. One is nationalism. Second is ethnicism. And I think based on this, two engaging metaphors, what we can do is maybe try to envision what are the alternative nationalities or alternative ethnicities or ethnicisms that kind of come about through this. If you look through the lens I look at this, India is not a country yet. The boundaries are porous, as always it has been. It's just one constitution that bound all of these communities, sometimes forcibly adjusted communities, to swear by a nation. However, without addressing the fallacies of historical mistakes, if we club all of these various nationalities that exist within India together, the sub-nationalism is going to come out. And I think this is what we are saying. India was never one nation. And if the caste that operates in India will never be a nation in its own self. Every caste is a nationality in itself. The sub-caste groups, you marry within your caste groups, you have relations with your caste groups, you do business with your caste groups. That's why the caste nationality and caste nationalism is more important than Indian nationalism. Indian nationalism just becomes an excuse for one to emphasize one's caste nationalism. And the caste nation that we are so dearly holding on to is something we need to now start talking about. The various ethnicities, so to say, within the Indian context, again has proven its own merits, so to challenge the very idea of India. And now, why do we talk about India, or why do we talk about the challenges that it poses India? Because I think unless we address those challenges beforehand, we will not be able to go to the next step of how to identify India, whom to identify India with. We have a glorious sloganeerings of unity in diversity. I don't see there is unity. There is definitely diversity. I can say enmity within the diversity. There's a lot of animosity that exists within various groups, and I think beyond the advertisement and the public relations that Indian government has managed to do since 1947, I think that is about time when we start asking this important question. And I'm glad in the 21st century, ever since the advent of Rohit Vemula's movement, the youth are now hitting the streets. So this law that is right now in a lot of debate and in disagreement, as Aniket was saying, and Hemanth also expounded, and people, this is primarily aimed at Muslims, but not only. This is aimed at Dalits, this is aimed at Adivasis, and this is aimed at those migrant workers. Within India, there is an internal migration that takes place. It is targeting the economic prosperities and futures of these people. Why would this send a fear amongst the ruling elite of our society? We will go through some statistics. I just want you all to be with me as I go through some of the ownership of resources. But one important thing that is constantly being read is about the refugees. That when I was raising a voice against this, I was told by benevolent Brahmins, if there are any, that this law is actually going to protect the Dalits from Pakistan, the Dalits from Bangladesh, the Dalits from other neighboring countries. I say, what good are Dalits going to do when they come to India? Is this a safe haven for Dalits? 47,000 crimes were committed alone in last year against Dalits, against the Prevention of Atrocities Act. So if 47,000 Dalits, for example, come from India, come from neighboring states, you add double to that number. This is the hypocrisy at its best when they are trying to use this channel. And what Amisha said was the ones who are protesting are actually against Dalit. No, they are against you and your ideological regime, which is Brahmin and Brahmanical at its center. It's very funny. We have to always talk about India through the caste lens because that is what operates. That is how one identifies oneself with the Indianness. The monstrosity of Brahminic Hinduism has given rise to such repeated genocidal events that people have also been evicted. From 2005 onwards, especially in Assam, talking about Assam. Okay, let's talk about recently. 1.9 million people were identified within them. Of that, 1.5 million were scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBCs. They are also so-called Hindus. The Brahmins have been constantly using the SC/ST OBC oppression to project it against Muslims. While when it comes to distributing the contracts and tenders to the crony capitalist friends to loot and to plunge the forests, the important resources, as well as harass the people from these marginalized communities, they don't become Hindus. Just yesterday, if you follow the news in Rajour in Rajasthan, a Dalit man was brutally beaten, allegedly for 500 rupees. Is this the country that Dalits deserve? Is this the country that Adivasis deserve? No one deserves this country. No one deserves this attitude, and no one should be forced to follow into this makeup of so-called India.
Can you explain to me what a Dalit is, because I don't know.
So Dalits are the former untouchables, who are the lowest of within the Hindu order, who constitute close to 19 to 20% of India's population.
Close
And
to how much?
say that again?
Close to what?
Close to 300 million.
Close to 300
Yes,
million?
across the religion.
And do they come into India from neighboring states?
No, they are in India right now.
Okay.
But also the law is saying, or some people are projecting it as, it's going to be helpful for the same Dalits who are in the neighboring countries. If they want to come, it might be helpful for them. But again, we are challenging that very notion. And again, if this law is about talking or preserving the sanctity of the refugee rights, I'm wondering where did the Akhand Bharat logic fit in? It is basically subverting the very idea of Akhand Bharat. If Akhand Bharat is all about that historical past, then you don't need visas, you don't need passports, you don't need refugee documents, you are all part of Akhand Bharat. Why is this law now in place? In contrast to the very idea of Akhand Bharat. And I think we should start repeatedly asking this question to these people. Now, one of the things is in this protest, we have seen there is a constitutional embrace by everyone. The grandmother love in Shahin Bagh. And the swearing by the preamble, as well as the constitutional ethos, is something that is very new to see when people across the board are actually trying to understand, are trying to mediate, and are trying to work through the Constitution. When we look at the Constitution, and of course we have various experts who talk about it, one thing that stands out is the very idea of secular. People would not appreciate it to be secular. People always want to compare, especially the right-wing buffoons, India with Pakistan. A state which itself is a fair mono-religious nationalist country, how can they encourage us to compare our country with a country that has already been failure compared to India on many accounts? And I think this is the kind of backwardness that these specific historians of Hindutva have been promoting. And again, Hindutva is a Brahmin's wet dream given to rest of the India. And that's why everybody is dreaming the same. We have to be always conclusive about these facts. And also, we should be careful when we dichotomize this Hindu and Muslim binary. It is not going to help anybody. I have been telling repeatedly, there is no such thing as Hindu. There is a thing as Saraswat Brahmin, Gaud Saraswat Brahmin, Iyengars, Mahars, Kayasts. This is something that has already been existing. Now, if you say Hindu and Muslim, I am neither of. Where will you put me? I am not a Hindu, and I refuse to be Hindu. I am not a Muslim. How will then this debate come into place? And I think this is what has been successful of the right-wing project, who has managed to club together the unwilling participants and citizens of this Hindutva into its fold by calling it Hindu. Scheduled caste are different people, like scheduled tribe are different people, and the other backward classes themselves are different people. If, like the guy who was touting a gun, who went to Shaheen Bagh, to a youngster who wanted to shoot, he was a proud Brahmin. So his accusation, when we try to call out that this is a Brahmin terrorist who was trying to carry gun and shoot at the innocent protesters, that time he becomes Hindu. But when it comes to pronouncing the merits and achievements of Nobel Prize winners, he becomes a Brahmin. There is nowhere Hindu to be seen within the binoculars of our reach. This issue that has been raised, I think, has been brought up to suppress three issues. One is the attention the global attention that it was getting for the Kashmir. The Kashmir issue has almost been, out of our memories. The kind of protest people were doing outside, now nobody talks about it because the CAA has been, overtaken. We don't know what's happening in Kashmir. We don't know what's the internet situation and what's the human rights and livelihood of the people there. Second is the economy is in shambles. BSNL, the state telecom network, actually 90,000 people next day were jobless. Who's going to talk about this? Isn't this the promise that we gave? And first of all, I want my 15 lakh. My mom voted for this guy so that she can get 15 lakh, and now she's cussing him. My grandma didn't vote him, but my mom did. Because of the 15 lakhs. This is the kind of failed promises they sold us. And yet, when you talk about this, they are slapping your face and saying, Hindu khatre mein hai. Which Hindus? What kind of Hindus? What region they belong and what caste they belong? Have we at least tried to delineate this very idea of Hindu? And I think, in addition to this, there are two important points I think we should engage. One is Devinder Singh. Do you know who Devinder Singh is? Devinder Singh is a J&K cop who was carrying a terrorist. He was the same guy who was responsible to take Afzal Guru, who was responsible for the parliament attack to Delhi. Devinder Singh was caught red-handed, yet we do not know anything about Devinder Singh. We do not know what were the plans, who are his masters, and under whose direction he was acting against the welfare of the people. The country logic is again raised into multiple questions. And then the Balakot attack, which actually brought Narendra Modi to power because there was a Balakot attack. 300 kilograms of RDX entering into a militarized zone. Again, this is something no country, every countryman and woman should be start asking. Recently, there were naval spies who were caught selling the information to Pakistan. I will read out their names. Their names nobody is carrying out. Why? You will recently know. All right, let's go. Satish Mishra, Deepak Trivedi, Sanjay Tripathi, Sanjeev Kumar, Pankaj Iyer, Bablu Singh, Vikas Kumar, Rahul Singh, Sanjay Rawat, Devsharan Gupta, Rinku Tyagi, Rushi Mishra, and Vedram. Three prominent things come out. Brahmins, Banyas, and Khatris, the Savarnas, are the people who are selling our country to the enemy nations. And I think this is where we need to start focusing on who is benefiting out of this promises of Hindutva and Akhand Bharat that has been told to us repeatedly. Thank you.